Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming back again. This is Ken Shoulders number 37. And it was not last week, but the week before, we actually had Dr. Ryan Wood here. And Ryan has something called UFO AI. It's his own special AI setup that he developed. And him and his father were they were document authenticators, world known document authenticators, and they actually did the MJ12 stuff and said that was real. They did something called the burn memo, which was something. It was put in a burn bag to be burned by the CIA, and somebody grabbed it and pulled it out, so it was burned all along the edges. But essentially, it was the kill order for JFK, and they authenticated that as well. So Ryan's got this UFO AI, and he put about 750,000 documents in it so far. And a while back, Lacey and I asked these questions, and then we had a response, and we're going to go through that response at the end, because what I did is after Lacey had done that, Lacey and I had done that, I gave Dr. Ryan Wood a huge file, the Stavati file that Chris Beskar gave me, and it's all on Ken Shoulders' work. So I gave it to him, and he said he put it in the computer, and he said, wait a couple of weeks for the computer to do its thing. So that's what I did. So I waited, and then recently I asked exactly the same questions again, because I wanted to see if the computer had learned anything or if the answers were slightly different. So today we're going to go through that. And the first stuff that we're going to go through is the stuff that I just recently got. And then the stuff at the end is the one that Lacey and I done. But again, exactly the same questions. So we'll let Brandon go ahead with the reading. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you, Eddie. Okay, so this is an email um that this is the one that you asked, Eddie. This is a
Yep.
question. So Eddie has asked this question. Your question to AI ufologist. Can you tell me about charge clusters and how it relates to all of these technologies? Can you explain etherons? Are they toroidal? Can you tell me about how exactly we can tap into the ether and use charge clusters to gain free energy? Are these the reply? Is this so? What's this, Eddie? Oh,
So that was the question. And now on page 2, you're going to read
it's
the
the answers. Okay.
response. Yeah.
Here you go, Ed. Looks like a strong response. Cheers, Ryan. UFO analysis AI. Certainly. Your question touches on some of the most profound and promising areas of advanced energy research, connecting the pioneering work of Ken Shoulders on charge clusters, electrum validium, or EVs, the concept of the ether, or ether spelt with just AE or just with an E, and their relationship to both free energy technologies and the propulsion systems reported in UFO and UAP phenomena. I will provide a comprehensive, technically detailed, and referenced answer, drawing from the extensive literature and experimental evidence available. Number one, charge clusters and Ken Shoulders' work. What are charge clusters? Charge clusters, as discovered and developed by Kenneth R. Shoulders, are micron-sized, highly organized aggregates of electrons, and sometimes ions, that exhibit remarkable stability and energy density. Shoulders called these entities electron validium, EVs, or EVOs, exotic vacuum objects,
Yep.
meaning strong charge. A typical EV contains on the order of 10 to the power of 11 electrons and can also carry positive ions, forming a quasi-neutral but highly energetic plasmoid. Key properties: size, typically 1 micron in diameter; charge, approximately 10 to the 11 electrons and sometimes 10 to the 6 ions; velocity, can travel up to 0.1 of the speed of light, i.e. 1/10 of the speed of light. Stability, remarkably stable, able to bore holes through ceramics and metals without dispersing. Energy output. When striking an anode or passing through a coil, EVs can produce electrical pulses with more energy than was required to create them, suggesting an external energy source is being tapped. Experimental evidence. So it's just talking about this patent here, or energy conversion using using high charge density. Peer-reviewed papers, Ken Shoulders, observations on the role of charged clusters in nuclear cluster reactions, and Ken Shoulders' EV, A Tale of Discovery. How are they created? EVs are typically generated by applying a sharp, high-voltage pulse to a pointed cathode in contact with a dielectric, positioned above a plate anode. The abrupt discharge causes a micro-explosion at the cathode tip, launching a compact, negatively charged plasmoid, the EV, across the gap.
I think that negatively charged part is pretty important.
Okay.
Bring that up.
Shoulders measured that the 1 micron diameter EV contained approximately 10 to the 11 electrons and 10 to the 6 ions. When launched, it typically travels at a velocity about 1/10 the speed of light. Shoulders has shown that when an EV electron vanadium strikes an anode, it produces an electric pulse, which contains more energy than it took to create it. So it's from this Moray King's charge clusters. The basis of...
And sorry, Brendan, to interrupt, but we have Moray here in the group. So thank you, Moray, for all the information and
So
books.
that's Moray King charge clusters, the basis of zero-point energy inventions, 1997. Number 2, charge clusters and UFO UAP technologies. Relationship to UFO propulsion and energy systems. Many advanced propulsion concepts reported in UFO literature, such as field propulsion, inertia modification, and anti-gravity, are consistent with the properties of charge clusters and their interaction with the vacuum or ether. Key connections. Plasmoid propulsion. The rapid coherent movement of charge clusters, plasmoids, can create local distortions in the vacuum, potentially reducing inertia or gravitational coupling. See Townsend Brown's electrogravitics and the B-field-Brown effect. Yeah. Energy extraction. The over-unity energy output observed in EV experiments suggests that these clusters may be tapping into the zero-point energy of the vacuum, a concept central to many free energy and UFO propulsion claims. Toroidal structures. Many UFOs are described as having toroidal donut-shaped energy fields or plasma sheaths. Theoretical models such as Leadbeater's ANU, Akimov's phyton, and King's dual vortex forms propose that toroidal counter-rotating vortices in the ether or vacuum are the basis for both charge and mass.
Yeah.
The discovery of macro-sized quasi-charge formation appears to have already been made by Shoulders. An abrupt electric discharge from a pointed cathode near a dielectric surface creates a micron-sized plasmoid with a net equivalent charge on the order of 10 to the power of 23 electrons. Shoulders named this charge formation electrum validium, or EV. Moray King dual vortex forms the key to a large zero-point energy coherence, 1999.
Mhm.
Number 3, etherons and the ether. Are they toroidal? What are etherons? Etherons is a term sometimes used to describe the fundamental units of or quanta of the ether, a hypothetical all-pervading medium that underlies physical reality and is the substrate for electromagnetic and gravitational phenomena. Toroidal nature. Leadbeater's ANU or ANU. What does that represent? I've forgotten what that atomic unit or something like that. In occult chemistry, Leadbeater and Besant described the fundamental building blocks of matter as dual vortex toroidal forms in the
Mhm.
ether, with opposite chiralities corresponding to positive and negative charges. Akimov's phyton. Russian torsion field theory models the vacuum as a lattice of Planck scale counter-rotating toroidal entities, photons, whose polarization gives rise to electric, gravitational, and torsion fields. King's dual vortex model proposes that the vacuum's zero-point energy can self-organize into vortical forms in any scale without charge polarity determined by the chirality handedness of the vortex. Leadbeater's Leadbeater suggested the positive charge circulation twists flux from a fourth dimension into a R3 space to become a source, while the negative charge circulation induces a corresponding sink. The illustrations show a centripetal inner vortex surrounded by an outer circulation connected by a Mobius twist. Moray King dual vortex forms the key to a large zero-point energy coherence, 1999. Number 4, how to tap the ether using charge clusters for free energy. Theoretical basis, zero-point energy and the ether. Quantum vacuum. Modern physics recognizes that empty space is filled with fluctuating electromagnetic fields, the zero-point energy. Ether as zero-point energy. Many researchers equate the ether with the quantum vacuum, suggesting it is a dynamic, energetic medium that can be cohered to tap under the right conditions. Mechanism of energy extraction. Abrupt non-linear motion. According to Prigoghine's theory of self-organization, a system far from equilibrium, e.g., a plasma undergoing abrupt discharge, can evolve into a coherent state, drawing energy from the vacuum. Charge cluster as a vacuum pump. The EV acts as a vacuum energy pump, cohering the zero-point energy as it moves and releasing excess energy when it interacts with matter, e.g., striking an anode or passing through a coil. Shoulders and Puthoff suggest that the excess energy is from the zero-point energy. Mesiatz shows that the ecton is launched as a result of an explosive emission from the cathode tip. Shoulders uses liquid metal, e.g. mercury, to maintain the tip and thus keeps it a source for repeatable launching. Moray King, Large Clusters, the Basis of Zero-Point Energy Inventions, 1997. Practical steps for tapping the ether with charged clusters. One, create a high voltage abrupt discharge system. Use a pointed cathode, possibly liquid metal, and a dielectric plate above a grounded anode. Apply a sharp, high voltage pulse to launch EVs, exotic vacuum objects. 2. Guide and harness. Number 2. Guide and harness the EVs. Use a dielectric guide or shroud to direct the EVs and separate them from residual ions. Surround the path with a coil or pickup circuit to capture the induced electrical pulses. 3. Rectify and store the output. Use a pulse current multiplier, PCM, or similar circuit to convert the high voltage, short duration pulses into usable DC power. Store the energy in capacitors or batteries. 4. Enhance the effect. Use a glow plasma, abnormal glow discharge, to precondition the cathode and increase EV production. See Korea's XSNRG technology, US patent, blah, 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 that there.
I have to find that one. Yeah.
Experiment with counter-rotating magnetic or electric fields to induce dual vortex forms and maximize zero-point energy coherence. Number 5, solid-state approaches. Trap EVs in a dielectric, e.g. cracked barium ferrite ceramic, via fractal emission, as in Sweet's vacuum triode amplifier. Use bifilar pickup coils to extract energy from the persistent EVs trapped in the material. Number 5, references and further reading. So, I'm going to go through these or just show them there.
Yeah, no, we can just go to the summary. Thanks, Brendan. Although having said that, Moray's books are at the top. Top 2 are Moray's books.
Yeah, okay, that. Summary, charge clusters, EVs, as discovered by Ken Shoulders, are micron-sized toroidal plasmoids that can tap into the zero-point energy of the vacuum or ether when created and manipulated under the right conditions. These clusters are likely the basis for many advanced energy and propulsion technologies, including those observed in UFO/UAP phenomena. Theoretical models suggest that the ether is composed of toroidal, counter-rotating vortices, etherons, photons, or ANU, and that by creating similar structures in the lab using abrupt nonlinear plasma discharges and dual vortex forms, we can cohere the zero-point energy and extract usable energy. This is the foundation for a new generation of free energy devices and may hold the key to advanced propulsion and environmental transformation. Number 1 of Moray King's references and Ken Shoulders and Korea.
Yeah.
This
You
is
can
a
read that. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
this is a rapidly evolving field, and I encourage you to consult the latest issues of Infinite Energy, Journal of New Energy, and the works of Moray B. King, Ken Shoulders, and Hal Puthoff for ongoing developments.
So it's pretty cool that we actually have Moray in the group. And then this next one here is the one that we did initially with Lacey and asked exactly the same questions. And we can just read through it. It's relatively short. And
Yeah, okay, so UFO analysis AI. The concept of charge clusters and their potential role in UFO technologies, as well as their connection to the ether, is a fascinating topic that bridges the realms of advanced physics, speculative science, and the study of unidentified flying objects. Charge clusters, often referred to as electrum viridium or EV, are micron-sized plasmoids that exhibit unique properties, potentially allowing them to interact with zero-point energy and other exotic energy sources. Let's delve into these concepts and explore how they might relate to UFO technologies and the ether. Charge clusters and their properties. Charge clusters are essentially tightly packed groups of electrons and ions that form under specific conditions, such as during electrical discharges or in plasma environments. These clusters can contain a net charge on the order of 10 to the 11 electrons and 10 to the 6 positive ions, as observed by researchers like Ken Shoulders. The stability of these clusters is often attributed to their helix vortex ring structure, which creates a toroidal magnetic field that traps the electrons and counteracts the Coulomb repulsion that would otherwise cause the cluster to disperse. The formation of charge clusters is typically associated with phenomena such as fractal emission, where the cracking of materials like crystals or dielectrics leads to the emission of these charged plasmoids. This process is akin to the generation of earthquake lights or ball lightning, where similar plasmoid structures are observed. Connection to UFO technologies. The potential application of charge clusters in UFO technologies is speculative but intriguing. The idea is that these clusters could serve as a means to tap into zero-point energy, providing a virtually limitless source of power for advanced propulsion systems. The interaction of charge clusters with zero-point energy could lead to the generation of high energy outputs, which might be harnessed to achieve the seemingly impossible feats of speed and maneuverability often reported in UFO sightings. UFOs are frequently described as exhibiting behaviors that defy conventional physics, such as rapid acceleration, sudden changes in direction, and hovering without visible means of propulsion. If charge clusters are indeed, if charge clusters can indeed couple with zero-point energy, they could provide the energy necessary to power such advanced propulsion systems, potentially explaining some of the observed characteristics of UFOs. Etherons and the ether. The concept of the ether or ether with an AE or just an E has a long history in scientific thought. Originally proposed as a medium through which light waves propagate. Although the classical notion of the ether was largely abandoned with the advent of Einstein's theory of relativity, modern interpretations suggest that the vacuum of space is not empty, but filled with fluctuating energy fields, often referred to as zero-point energy. Etherons in this context could be considered as hypothetical particles or entities that exist within the ether, facilitating interactions between charged particles and the vacuum energy. These etherons might exhibit toroidal structures similar to the vortex rings observed in charged clusters, allowing them to interact with electromagnetic fields and potentially serve as conduits for energy transfer. Tapping into the ether with charged clusters. To harness the energy of the ether using charged clusters, one would need to create conditions that allow for the formation and stabilization of these clusters. This could involve, one, creating plasma environments. By generating plasma through electrical discharges or other means, one can create the conditions necessary for charge cluster formation. The plasma provides the charged particles needed to form the clusters and the electromagnetic fields required to stabilize them. Number two, utilizing fractal emission. By inducing fractal emission in materials, such as through mechanical stress or electrical excitation, charge clusters can be generated. These clusters can then interact with the surrounding electromagnetic fields and potentially couple with zero-point energy. 3. Designing toroidal structures. The toroidal shape of charged clusters is key to their stability and interaction with the zero-point energy. Designing devices that can create and maintain these toroidal structures could enhance their ability to tap into the ether. Number 4, exploring resonant frequencies. Identifying the resonant frequencies at which charge clusters interact most effectively with the zero-point energy could lead to more efficient energy extraction. This might involve tuning the electromagnetic fields or the plasma environment to these frequencies. Conclusion. The study of charge clusters and their potential applications in UFO technologies and ether interactions is a field ripe with possibilities. While much of this remains speculative, the underlying principles of plasma physics, electromagnetism, and zero-point energy provide a foundation for further exploration. By understanding and harnessing these phenomena, we may unlock new sources of energy and propulsion that could revolutionize our understanding of physics and technology.
Wow, very cool. Thank you, Brandon. I was just going to comment that number 4, exploring resonant frequencies, identifying the resonant frequencies at which charge clusters interact most effectively with the zero point, could lead to more efficient energy extraction. This might involve tuning the electromagnetic fields or the plasma environment to these frequencies. This is something that Dr. James Schwartz, I think, is doing in the Flux Power Generator. And there's on Technology Envoy on my YouTube channel, there's actually a show that we did with Dr. James Schwartz. And James Schwartz was actually a really good friend of Paul Laviolette's. He told me that while Paul was writing Secrets of Anti-Gravity Propulsion, that James and Paul spent hours talking about Tesla technology, because James is probably the most prominent Tesla expert on the planet. So very cool. And it's really cool. Moray, thank you for being here. And so lots of references to you. What do you think about this definitions here?
Yeah, I can certainly add some updates because
Yeah. Um,
well, one is there's
Brendan, can
definitely
you
an
take that
error.
down, the thing, so we can see Moray big?
I'm big.
There we go. Cool.
Am I big now?
Yeah, you're big now. You're a
Uh,
legend.
yeah, yeah. Now your face is being blocked by some ad or something, and that's not on mine. Okay.
Oh,
They so first thing, it's definitely an exponent is wrong. That 10 to the 23rd for the charge clusters.
yeah.
I know exactly what that mistake is. It's actually an error. It's 10 to the 11th. And the reason 23 is there is because it was drilled into us in chemistry, right? 10 to the 23rd, 6.02, 10 to the 23rd, Avogadro's number. And
Yeah.
that's effectively a typo, except it was done by my brain, not my hands. That
Oh, wow.
wrong number. That's wrong number. And I'm impressed. The AI memorizes everything I type is Holy Writ.
Exactly. We'll have to update it now.
It's
Let Ryan
hallucinating,
know.
right?
Yeah.
But I was the one hallucinating at the time. That's an actual mistake. So I cringed when I saw that and looked in the book, and sure enough, it's that way. I
So did you just check? Did you just
misspent
notice
that.
that typo just now? You just recognized it just
Just
now.
now,
Okay.
when you
Wow.
read it, I cringed. I says, "That's Avogadro's number." Immediately, that flashed into my head. That's not 10 shoulders. It's 10 to the 11th
Yeah.
is his number. And so I feel embarrassed because I'm kind of a perfectionist. I said, "How can I make that mistake?" But
Yeah,
never
people,
caught that one.
scientists recognize typographical errors. I mean, someone in
Wow.
your brain
Yeah,
recognize it.
yeah, it's not quite a typo because the stutter came from my brain. It's closer to an hallucination because from the training of 10 to just by habit, 10 to the 23rd, right? Just
Wow.
from chemistry. So that's the quote big error. The other idea that to keep in mind is the notion of a charge cluster is actually not the right model. And and it was very, very popular because it seemed to exhibit all that charge, 10 to 11th type of charge.
Yeah.
And how could it hold together? So that all the arguing how this can't exist and everything else, and because they're essentially on the wrong model. And Ken Shoulders suspected this right out of the gate. He says he wasn't even convinced of the vortex, the simple vortex ring is it, or right, because there seems to be more going on.
Right.
And all these points that Ken Shoulders made, I agreed with him. I said, yeah, there's more things that's is sophisticated. So charge clusters, that name for it came from Hal Fox,
Oh,
who was a journal of new energy and as well as fusion facts. He loved that phrase for charge clusters, and it stuck. It pretty well stuck as a model. So what a closer model is macroscopic charge. So I'm making something from the fabric, from the ether, right?
yeah.
I'm making this structure. And the important point on that I keep stressing now, whenever I present Ken Shoulders' work, is the fact that he could make positive ones as well as pair production, could make a pair of them. Now
Right.
focus on the positive EVs. They are not clusters of positrons at all. Because when they strike their target and dissipate and make a crater, there is no gamma radiation from electron positron annihilation that
Right.
you would expect to see.
Yeah.
Nothing, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a manifestation of the macroscopic form. So, and then the key thing to note, and Shoulders kept stressing this, is the charge to mass ratio always seems to be at the level of electron or positron, depending on its charge, the charge to mass ratio. And he felt that he was discovering something very, very fundamental, the nature of the vacuum. and what's going on that wants to manifest this ratio. So
Right.
regardless of the scale, so we're making larger ones.
Yeah.
Right, we're making larger ones, and they tend to entrain matter. So
Yeah.
that's why you have all those ions, and they tend uh, to drag matter along with it for the propulsion, meaning they're going to distort the gravitational field or make artificial gravity
Yeah.
essentially with it. And so then once we have the concept, we're actually working the vacuum to make larger versions of this fundamental phenomena,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Rather than
Like
trying to collect charges that are just going to repel apart. Same
by
problem with the nucleus. Why does the nucleus hold together, right?
yeah.
When it's comprised of separate protons and neutrons, right? Same mechanism of a problem. There's something about the fabric itself that's more important to make the macroscopic object
Yeah.
that should fly apart if it were just
Yeah. Like
repulsion.
ball
So,
lightning, for example, has a larger scale. Yeah.
mhm. If and can it have some net residue charge? Can it be neutral? It probably could be whatever it is. But the charge to mass ratio was the pattern that Shoulders observed. And I said, it sounds like you discovered something very fundamental about the way the vacuum wants to make something.
Did
And the
did
other
did
fundamental constants. Go ahead.
did Ken Shoulders discover charge to mass ratio? Was that known before? Is it charge to
Yes, he
mass
did.
ratio? He
Ratio,
discovered charge to
regardless
mass
of
ratio.
this of the
Yeah.
score. Well, the charge to mass ratio of an electron or positron is well known in standard physics.
Yeah.
What he discovered was every time he makes these EVs much larger, right, 10 to the 11th collection it's manifesting the equivalent of a large charge,
Yeah.
right? It's just large, but it's a coherent entity, not a collection of smaller ones.
Yeah.
And that he stressed that, and I agreed with him. So whenever I present, I always go right to the positive one. This is the most fundamental discovery of Ken Shoulders: the fact that he can make positive ones, that they were not comprised of positrons, no gamma radiation on their destruction when they make their crater hit a metal and everything else. Said that is what to keep in mind, the most important part. Then I would say on the advanced propulsion ideas, I think what's happening is we're just making bigger versions of that type of entity, just making a
Yeah.
large coherence from the vacuum. We're not, okay, now let's work with some charge clusters and work with them, or work with EVs and use them to make vortexes. I think if you start to make macroscopic vortexes, which was the point of that paper, featuring, I think, the Paul Pantone invention, was that you're hitting on a fundamental mechanism for assembly from the ether. Okay, we get the ether to train. In this case, it's from the heavy particles in the plasma itself. When you start to, the ether will follow whatever the heavy particles are doing. So if you make them go into a vortex, the ether will go into a vortex. Making the vortex ring, the ether will follow like that. And
Yeah.
so and this comes straight out of quantum electrodynamics, the very different nature between the way an electron's interacting with the background ZPE or the ether versus the way the vacuum polarization versus a proton.
Yeah.
It's heavy mass, steep lines of vacuum polarization converging on it. And so that becomes the key particle to start creating these effects. And so you can do experiments along, make
Yeah.
vortexes of the heavy particles, ionize it, and that's why like the favorite was mercury, right?
Yeah.
Which is dangerous to play with, so you don't want to play with it. But the Vimanas, right? The
Yeah.
mercury vortex, because it easily
Tesla used it
ionizes.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, usually I know they're anti-gravity schematics or something. There was a group playing around with this, playing with the mercury, and
Yeah.
I go, oh, that's
And
so dangerous, right?
the Nazi
Eh,
flying bell too. That was a form of mercury too, right?
Yeah, oh, I don't know. I haven't studied the details, but I've heard about their work. But
Yeah.
it's an easy starting point to that, because I say, oh well, I want to make this vortex of heavy particles. Well, let's start just by flowing the liquid first in the form you want, then ionize it.
Yeah.
And now you have your heavy particles are already in motion, then you ionize it. So I'm looking for, as I scan for energy inventions, those that are claiming um, type of vortex, high vortex speeds, Ed Rockwell was the name that came to mind. These inventors these inventions get suppressed very fast.
Yeah.
I think they're truly making effects that are big, right? And therefore, but it explains why, gee, why it could be done so easily, right? If just
Yeah. And Moray, in I can't remember which number it was. I think it was number 26 or 27. We went through part of your chapter of your book, and then I showed his name is Pavel Asmira, and he's showing how protons and neutrons are formed by these counter-rotating vortices as well. And he shows models of them and everything. So it all kind of corresponds back. And the cool thing is that it does correspond back to these etherons, which are the actually smallest structure. And I said to Chris Beskar once in an interview, I said, I think that an etheron, charge cluster, and ball lightning are all one and the same. They're just all fractals of each other, essentially, right? Just up the
at
fractal
different
tape.
scales,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
We have a similar mechanism at different scales. So up in the macroscopic, really get good, you make a really big one, and that's your UFO propulsion, right? You're
Yeah.
making a big one surrounding you, and then you could go down to smaller scales. So this fractal-like nature pattern is the Russians really liked that.
Yeah.
Mendevev was the name that came to mind, and he was, boy, speaking having plasmoid donuts on the brain. He was like throughout, and he made models of the nucleus based on that. Russians are very, very willing to explore other models of
Absolutely. Yeah.
nuclear science, right? They're not locked up on the quark model at all, right? They're
I,
and
I
based on the experiments,
yeah.
ball lightning and transmutation. Those experiments have grounded them to. They're paying their professors to explore other theories
Yeah.
and come up with models that will explain the results of those experiments. So the
Absolutely.
willingness to look at the experimental results puts them way ahead on their modeling of what's going on in nature.
Yeah.
And so there we are. So those are the corrections. It's a macroscopic, it's not a collection of charges at all, some type of macroscopic formation, and a little typo number was wrong.
And also with
Um,
the quark model, they've never, because I studied a master's degree in particle physics, they've never seen an individual quark before. They think are hadrons, connections of two, what they call as two or three quarks. They've never seen a quark on its own. It's never been detected. So Paul
Yeah,
was saying, Paul Lapidat was saying a fragment. They were he just said Paul thought they were just particle fragments. Paul Lapidat.
yeah. There you go. Oh, haha. Now you can't prove me wrong. There's no way to detect it. And I'd say make the same joke about string theory. They're fundamental particles down at Planck length, 10 to the minus 33rd centimeters, the Planck
yeah.
length
Yeah.
that Wheeler derived, I think, straight out of relativity, just as what happens when energy density gets dense enough, and space pinches off, and you get your black hole and your wormhole and get into all those ideas. Well, that's the number, what he called the already unified field theory. All Wheeler did, this is back in 57, a phys ref paper. That's the basis of geometric dynamics. He just said, okay, here's the equation he came up with, the energy density for the vacuum fluctuations to make quantum electrodynamics self-consistent and work. It's that
Yeah.
cubic relationship.
Yeah.
The energy density goes as the cube of the frequency, and it goes up towards infinity. And now everything is fine. It's self-consistent with special relativity and all this other stuff. It was made everything self-consistent. So then you had Dirac's equation, and electrodynamics was often running in a self-consistent theory. And so but things can't just go to infinity, right? And
Yeah.
so you have singularities appearing and things like that. And the black hole was an example, right? Okay, now space pinches on, and that's all Wheeler pointed to. And so he derived 10 to the minus 33rd centimeters as, quote, the Planck length, right?
Yes.
That named it after Planck, to honor Planck, and that became the size of the little vacuum fluctuation, the entrance point of the mini hole that I think Serfati. I'm not sure who
Yep.
gave it the name. Maybe it was Wheeler. Mini hole for mini white hole, mini black hole, flux entering, flux leaving, and you just derived. There's your fundamental a particle, if you will. It's just the entrance point based on that particular calculation. And when you and so a lot of people have trouble with particles because we, us humans, want to make everything reduced down to particles. And
Yeah,
even the talking quantum physics and everything else, oh, it's a particle. It has to be a particle, right? In reality, it's a wave, right?
yeah,
It doesn't
exactly.
manifest, and it does not
Yeah,
manifest in particle form until
yeah,
the consciousness, which gets into really interesting stuff. And it's the basis of non-local stuff, which
yeah,
the blew all non-locality blew out the paradigm, right?
yeah.
Because we want a logical, orderly universe. So Einstein was quick to observe that. He says on the normal space time that warps, we still didn't destroy our concept of locality, right? We just have some warping going on, but we
Yeah.
still kind of have,
You're just frozen.
you know,
Oh
Moray's
yeah, it froze up a little bit
back
there.
again now.
It's in time space where not known locality is essentially right on the other side of the Turing wave, because the Turing wave is below the Planck level, and the etherons actually form this Turing wave, which is actually just a standing wave pattern. Essentially, it's like cymatics. So these little etherons form it, but they're consciousness, as Paul Laviolette talks about them in their definition as conscious entities. And we also know from
who coined the name Etheron?
Paul
Oh,
Laviolette,
Oh, okay.
yeah, that,
So,
he
and
and now see, once again, that's a particle concept. We're still stuck on particles, right? So then it implies,
but
oh, it
he's
has to be localized at a certain size,
yeah,
things like that.
just saying he's treating them like a chemical, an organic, a kind of molecule, like a chemical molecule. But he's saying we can't.
Right.
He's not defining. He says he's not defining their physical nature. He's saying regardless of their nature, they just behave like reaction diffusion molecule chemistry molecules. He didn't define a point an actual etheron. He's dealing with them like Brownian motion, like substrates. He's dealing with them in substrates, but he's not defining what the. He says, regardless of their physical nature, you don't need to know about their physical nature. Anyway.
Yeah,
I,
and I might mention on string theory, right? Well, they have now they all modeled out. They chose to model at the Planck length, right? 10 to
yeah,
minus 33rd. Now they have their little string, their little loop, and everything else. And then in order to oh, look, it's a localized particle again, right? But in order to try to explain non-locality, they end up pretending, oh, it's oscillating. This is the wave part, oscillates out to virtually huge distances as this little particle as it oscillates. And I said, as soon as you do that, you make your model something like that in order to try to get a non-local mechanism modeled. That's why they're motivated. They're trying to model the quantum stuff, non-locality from the
yeah,
quantum wave.
yeah,
And now all of a sudden, they made an absurd quote particle, because if the thing is going to oscillate like this, so one step that say you can't prove me wrong because I'm down to Planck length. No experiment can you do to prove I'm right or wrong. And then I'm postulating it behaves this way. Well, that's not a particle behavior at all.
yeah,
So now your fundamental thing, right, that we want to be a particle, it's us humans keep wanting to map it down to a particle,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But of course we do see particles in existence, the protons, right? The electrons start to smear out, but when we see localized particles, we certainly can make them at a big scale.
Well,
So,
particle dust
so there,
particles.
yeah. So notice there's this fundamental modeling disconnect. That's the human mind, us, wants to make it simple. And so we say we want to go particles all the way down.
yeah,
And then the fundamental nature of what's going on becomes non-local, right? And
yeah,
in an energetic substrate. So we're left with kind of a contradiction, right? The same contradiction
yeah.
that's wrestled
And
with in quantum physics. They are left with this puzzling contradiction.
and part of the problem here is with subquantum kinetics from Paul Laviolette, there is no Big Bang. It's it's a state of continuous creation essentially, and every time the Turing wave blinks or comes in and out of existence um, from we're in space time, but it goes back into time space and oscillates back and forth. It recreates everything in existence. So
Yeah,
that's the Akashic record that actually can be read by people and so on. And that's why you can time travel back to certain points, because the Moray that started a long time ago is still here. Like that started at the beginning of this session is still here. It's just we could time travel back to half an hour ago and meet yourself there, because you are still there in the Akashic record, essentially, right?
And I'll just read this about Paul when Paul defines ether.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
So the methodology of subquantum kinetics represents a radical departure from current thinking in physics. That is necessary to make some clear initial statements regarding the basic premises involved. Subquantum kinetics begins by proposing the existence of a primordial transmuting ether composed of populations of subtle particles called etherons. Etherons are assumed to have the following characteristics. They are particle-like and of a size far smaller than subatomic particles. They exist in space at an arbitrarily high density. They may be present in large multitude of different types, type A, B, C, and so on. We may specify that these various types of etherons, aeons, bions, ceons, etc., forming a near infinite progression of states. They transform from one type into another, either spontaneously or as a result of interactions with other etherons. These transformations occurring in a prescribed manner. They diffuse in all directions. In a given volume of space, etherons of a particular type are generated and removed only through diffusion and transformation processes. They do not arbitrarily pop into existence or without coming from some preceding etheron state, and they do not pop out of existence without going to some antecedent etheron state. In other words, a population of existing etherons is conserved in all regions of space. No attempt is made in subquantum kinetics to characterize the structural nature of individual etheron entities. Regardless of their internal structure, we need only know that they are the elements that compose the heterogeneous ether, that they have freedom to move through space, and that they transform from one type into another by following specific reaction pathways. So he's just using fixed law of diffusion. Sorry, God.
Did he use any when it travels through space? Does he have any velocity statements? Yeah, read further the definitions of space and time, because he.
In subquantum kinetics, it is not necessary to introduce any special properties for space other than to assume that it is infinite or nearly infinite in extent, that its geometry is Euclidean, and that its dimensions are invariant, i.e., it is cosmologically stationary. These assumptions find support in our studies of the observable universe. See Chapter 7. Property of distance, G, between two physical objects is described in relation to the etherons that occupy space, not in relation to space itself. Thus, if we wished to assume that spatial dimensions were expanding, it would be incorrect to speak of space itself as expanding. One should instead speak of the ether within a given volume of space as expanding, i.e., of etherons dispersing from a particular volume of space as they increase their mutual separations. To describe relativistic effects, it is useful to distinguish between relative and absolute frames in space. We may consider the following concepts and definitions. Absolute reference frame. Given a planar surface of arbitrarily large dimensions, a reference frame may be found such that no net diffusive flux would exist across this plane for all orientations of the plane. Such a plane would then be said to be at rest in the absolute reference frame. Relative reference frame. A reference frame that is in motion in relation to the absolute reference frame is said to be relative. Given a planar surface of arbitrarily large dimensions located in such a relative frame, it would be possible to find an orientation of the plane such that the net flux of etherons crossing this plane is non-zero. In particular, the orientation that allows this plane to intercept the maximal net flux of etherons, because he's dealing with etherons as substrates, large volumes of etherons. He's not looking at the individual particles. He's just dealing with them as in substrates. Flux of etherons defines a direction perpendicular to that relative frame's direction of motion in relation to the absolute frame. When we also infer the following definition of time, time is assumed to be infinite or nearly infinite in extent, to be irreversible and to pass at a constant rate. Events measured in the absolute reference frame are said to have absolute durations. Events measured in the relative reference frame are said to have relative durations. It is
So we seem
useful.
to have one dimension, right, of time
He's
here.
yeah, but I mean, according to some quantum kinetics, now, to my view, there's different models looking at the nature from a different perspective. But this, according to some quantum kinetics, it just the subquantum kinetics model, it just travels in a straight line. He does try to explain the Philadelphia experiment in terms of SQK, but he does postulate higher dimensions.
Yeah, because my understanding is in space-time we have the three coordinates of space and one of time, and in time-space we have three coordinates of time that lay out where you are, the coordinates, and you have one of space, and that one of space is the particle. So when I talk with Chris Beskar, Stavati, and David Wilcock, the discussions are, because we have this non-locality in time-space, and we have these three dimensions of time, we can go anywhere that we want with this particle, and that's how teleportation and time travel is achieved, essentially.
He did say that some quantum kinetics is a work in progress. So it's not what he's written here is not the complete story. Okay, it is useful to introduce the concept of ether substrate in order to describe the collective behavior of etherons. Ether substrate, a collection of etherons of a given form or type, constitutes an ether substrate. All ether substrates considered as a whole constitute reaction kinetic ether called a transmuting ether. Blah blah blah. Okay, so these are these examples of a mod of X substrates of X and Y, 2X and a Y going to 3X, and one of transforming from A to X.
Transformation, yeah.
Okay, so I'll just put that down for the time being.
Very cool. And Moray, I wanted to introduce you to someone that's in our group here. We call her Just a Girl, and she's actually taken pictures of charge clusters before. The only other person that I know of is Ken Shoulders himself, actually. So if you want to just say hi to Moray. Oh, there? No? Oh, she must not be there.
Yes, yeah. I'm here, but I had to agree to the recording first. I couldn't unmute myself.
Oh, okay, cool.
Hi, Moray. How are you doing? This is Just a Girl.
You want to remain anonymous or ambiguous?
Yes.
Yeah, she's the one that's going to run the EVO laboratory for my project.
Have we met in person?
Not yet.
Oh,
I would love to, though. Will. I would love to.
Well, get your teleportation working, and I'll be right over.
That's right. That's right. I am so keen on getting all this accomplished. You have no idea.
Well, how fun.
Yeah. So I saw her research not long ago, and one picture was of a charge cluster, and I was like, oh my God, that's a charge cluster. So then I started talking to her about it, and she didn't really realize that we were doing all this research and who Ken Shoulders were, or even, I don't know, did you know who Moray was? Probably not.
No, I had no idea. This was all new, yet I'm so grateful for this connection and to finding some explanations for what I have found and seen and trying to explain. And now here is actually explanation.
Yeah. So Murray, do you know of anybody else that has taken pictures other than Ken Shoulders of charge clusters?
Well, and Ken said it was pretty difficult. He had to use the pinhole camera
Yeah.
because there's too much light coming from them. But I was going to say something about Just the Girl. I remember my first encounter with a woman, but that was my thought. She's a girl. That was a very impressive research in this whole 0 point energy stuff. So it was all guys when I started, Tom Bearden and everybody else. And so my first encounter with Just the Girl was Elizabeth Rauscher, who knocked my socks off by her paper. So it's a paper in the Plasma Journal. I think it's in the 60s, one of the journals on plasma research, plasma experiments.
Yeah.
And she was proposing quantum electrodynamic model for plasmas and cohering of the vacuum and the quantum electrodynamics. And it was the first connection of quantum electrodynamics to plasma. So we're talking about macroscopic, large scale effects. And
Mhm.
here she was proposing it in the 60s. I think 67 might be. And so my first encounter with Elizabeth Rauscher was that paper. And later on, after we got out the iron, we brought her out in the 80s to consult with us, right
Oh, cool.
at the time. So I got to meet her. We became friends ever since when we met. And so she's older and she passed away since, but I think considerably older than me. But I was just, I get started in my 20s. And so she was, boy, I said, that's the first time because I'm asking, well, where are the girls, right? It's all
Yes,
guys in this
exactly.
weird UFO research. Well, I can answer that now. Well, the guys want to make weapons, right? So we're off. All the guys are attracted to that. So we
That's
want to make big
yeah.
clubs to club each other with ZPE, right? So that it kind of explains the motivation. The girls saying, "Oh, we don't want to mess with that."
Yeah.
So, and in either case, that's so cool. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. What a
Okay.
Yeah.
lovely story. I thought you were much younger, you know? You just gave away a little bit of your age there.
Well, I once when I got started, I was right. I was
There you go.
I was and like once I got hooked, it did. Once the Moray synchronicity bit me in the butt, right? 76. I was locked in. I says, I'm meant to do this. There was no deviating me at that point, and had to continually honor Moray's primary hypothesis, which was the heavy ions are the cohering entity. And this is before I learned of Ken's shoulders. We
Yeah.
had ideas of vortexes and ball lightning. I says, look for that, but it was always the ions. And so when we get to the vortex ring, we're actually moving the ions in that ring, not electrons. We're moving the ions in the vortex itself. So
Okay.
when we finally made a plasmoid or anything else, it's the ions themselves that are undergoing that precessional motion, the
There you
toroidal spin that
bingo.
closes onto a toroidal spin. So we have a spin of a spin, a natural precession.
Yeah.
And as you know, from conservation of angular momentum, gyroscopes don't want to jerk their axis. They're really resistant. So they are locking in to
Yeah.
ether some state. But when you start to do this, you could do it, you're making the ether follow that, right? And you had to use the heavy particles to do that. So all of a sudden, the ions are the entraining entity, the heavy particles. You
So
make them into the vortex or the vortex ring,
yeah.
right? Now all of a sudden you have you're working ethers rather than the ether locking you in with angular momentum, which doesn't let you switch. All of a sudden you're working ether. Now you get the control inertia and you get the control momentum and everything else.
Yeah.
And there's your connection. And yeah, I think that's
And I also
I have a question for that, if I may.
sure.
yeah.
Murray, do you think so? I do as well platelet-rich plasma therapy. And in doing so, I draw blood, I put it through a centrifuge and re-inject it into the person. Now, it makes a difference at what frequency and speed the plasma gets produced. Even the size of the needle has an effect on outcome in what I am achieving. Same as with laser therapy, etc. I need to have the right frequencies, the right wavelengths, and so on. So is there by chance, I mean, we know that every thing is always connected. So when I draw the blood, it is still connected even while it's in the centrifuge. And information gets created by spinning, and it gets a new frequency and spin within the ions that can then create the healing process within the body. Is it that spin that creates the healing process?
Wow.
Potentially.
Wow, because you know, we shifted levels, so to speak, right into biology. So we'll circle back and clarify the name. You used the word plasma, right, which is like the
Yes.
plasma of blood. So
Yeah.
there's an unfortunate name coincidence using that in biology, something very different than the plasma in physics, where I'm just
Yeah.
ionizing matter, getting
Yes.
electrons off the matter. Okay, so right away, and so biology and its interaction with, let's say, the ether, the 0 point energy. The key in biology, it once again is the ions, because we are ionic beings. All the currents and all the activity in us in biology is from ionic motion of ions. The nerve firing is based on an ionic transfer. So everything is there. And then the early electrotherapeutic devices working with now plasma tubes, plasma being the physics, right? The standard plasma.
Yeah.
When they tuned them, right, to oscillate ion oscillations in the tubes. By the way, Moray's patent, T. Henry Moray, electrotherapeutic apparatus. He put his tubes into a patent that appeared to be a therapy device. Ion tubes were the key, and you look back across the history of effective therapies using electromagnetic methods, they were using ion oscillations in the various tubes that they were inventing. And then you get into the right frequencies, all these other things. If you oscillate the ions, right, you're now interacting with biology,
Yeah.
because just and it's in right at the edge of the science. If we have ion oscillations and we're making an electromagnetic wave from the ion oscillations, can there be a difference than compared to just moving electrons in a wire to make the electromagnetic waves?
Yeah.
In classical physics, no. In quantum electrodynamics, wide open because the interaction with the vacuum is so different
Yeah.
in quantum electrodynamics compared to classical. So there's the key. So by electromagnetism, especially if it's coming from ion oscillations and interacting with biology, opens up a world of possibilities in biology, in medicine, right? For good and bad.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And now there's kind of the connection. And just keep in mind, when the word is plasma is kicked around, you have to ask, well,
Yes,
what meaning are they
Yeah.
making? So unfortunate, in English, we often pick the same word to mean different things.
yes.
By vocabulary creates such confusion when somebody locks onto the wrong meaning, and you get interesting creativity on their idea. I said, wow,
No,
where'd that come
now
from?
my question is though, if the spinning itself, the spinning, not the plasma, not the word, but the spinning itself creates the new coherence for the healing. So, for example, when I would use laser therapy with the right frequencies, I create neoangiogenesis, the renewal of tissues, and it can even repair nerve tissues, which is no other tool in this world can repair nerve tissue, but laser therapy can do so, light therapy can do so. Now, when we enhance the platelet-rich plasma that has already been in a spinning device and add laser to it, it is now being found just recently out of California that it can even repair the most severe neurological damages.
Wow.
That's neat.
That is super cool.
Yeah. And so
And
that can only have to do with the right frequencies.
Yeah, and biology definitely has responds. We respond all cells, have a respond electromagnetically because of the exclusion zone. Gerald Pollack's work, is that familiar? That surrounds every cell. Their
Yeah.
hydrophilic membrane. Does this sound familiar? Does everybody know about Jerry Pollack's work? He's up at the University of Washington. He made a discovery that every membrane, he does experiments on a hydrophilic membrane. I think naphthalene was his material that he was using for the experiments. It naturally spontaneously forms a charge separation. Can be great up to maybe a half a millimeter, or a huge number of molecules are participating.
Wow.
Water molecules, and this self-organization causes a charge separation, right? That means every cell has this charge separation membrane, and that's the foundational discovery in biology that why every cell so readily interacts with electromagnetic waves. You have a charge separation right there that causes the interaction. And so, you know, the answer is we definitely biology, right? Across the board, not just we as humans, but individual cells do interact with electromagnetism. And there's characteristic frequencies for that are just translate into physical oscillations. So when you have things that are kind of on the same wavelength as the characteristic frequency, like a cell, you can, different cells are different, have a resonance that would wiggle them. If you want to destroy them, you just overdrive it and they'll pop apart. You killed that cell, but left the other cells safe. So you definitely have the concept of linking a variety of electromagnetic phenomena with biology, and we're just scratching the surface on the knowledge. Big pharma's trying to banish all that. That's why
Yeah.
Jerry's not popular at the medical school up there. They don't want this. They banish using the dark field microscope of all things, right? You can watch biology while it's live, putting on a show for you of amazing things. And it's no, that's illegal. You can't do that. You can't look at that. And and that to me is a travesty. They intentionally block the knowledge, right?
Yes.
Trying to take control. So and boy, talk about suppression. You come up with something effective that's from these different directions that is not theirs, not their patented thing. Boy, the suppression really comes down on typically the doctors, anybody who wants to use it, right? And if you're not
Yeah.
a doctor, then you're a quack, and we have to bust you for practicing medicine without a license, right? So it's an underground medicine has occurred throughout the world because of this draconian restriction. But we are wide open for discovery.
Yeah.
Everything's on the table, and Reich in his microscope and his Rife, right? Rife,
Royal Rife. Yeah.
the dark field microscopes are great if we allow them, especially with technology today. I had literally a friend that invented one with an old satellite camera from the 70s as his magnifier. Laser
No.
laser illumination from guiding a laser on fiber optics. And that would be considered old technology. You could blow it up with the digital imaging that we have now, like on an IMAX screen, watching biology under a microscope live while it's doing its thing. And guess what they don't like? The discovery of pleomorphism. Pleomorphism, cells changing from one being to another type of cell, right? They don't like that. But think of it. Well, it's common sense. We have a common DNA, and depending what you turn on from epigenetics, what are you going to turn on to make what proteins, right? So you could see inducing changes in behavior from weak electromagnetic fields, right? So the whole thing becomes just astounding as far as the possibilities are concerned. Well, if
Yeah.
we really start to understand biology, and so yeah, right now we have to basically do it by experiments and empirical evidence and things like that. But that, in my opinion, the dark field microscopes allows you to do your experiments. and observe what helps, what doesn't help, etc.
Definitely.
You can watch, right? That would, and it's a sad story because they said the lab Clio here in Utah, they wouldn't allow the doctor to use it anymore. Oh, that's not a sanctioned lab technique to do that.
That's
So
crazy.
they would have to, he had to fight a lawsuit and everything else. He was older and just was done, really. Wasn't allowed to use it. And I thought, what a travesty to lose. And this was just a low, I'm repeating myself, just a weak version compared to what actually can be done today with our magnifying technology and our light laser and fiber optics technology. Boy, what we could learn just from that one instrument and trying all the ideas right on electromagnetic stimulation. And you can look it up on the web. People are doing it, reporting what they're observing, and it's open. Right. And I mentioned that to I mentioned that because we brought up biology, is that would be the key instrument to accelerate discovery, because you just look, is it helping or not? Right.
Yeah.
That's all. What's going on as I observe whatever I want to do in the form of a stimulation. You can just start sweeping a frequency and realize, oh, when I get there, something's really activated, because there are resonances everywhere.
That's
Right.
right.
The
Yes.
coupling of energy differently everywhere. So biology is, wide open for discovery. So that's my 2 cents worth. Boy, if we want to accelerate dramatically biology discovery and new therapies, there's your primary instrument, because it allows you to observe
Yeah.
living life. So it's a travesty because it's a personal friend that we met that made this discovery, right?
Yeah.
And he's very depressed over how it got banished and everything else, and so it's terrible, right? I took him to the Tesla conference. You got to tell people about this. So when you want to
Yeah.
interact
Yeah.
down there, so we'll try to substitute you in as a slot speaker. If somebody doesn't show up, they grab somebody else to take the
I
speaking
just
part.
ask who's SK who's joined? Eddie, do you know who that is? SK in the group?
No.
Don't know that. Okay.
No.
SK,
Well,
can you
introduce
speak?
yourself.
Hello, SK. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, it's Stefan.
Oh, then we do know.
Okay.
Then we do know
Stefan
who that
Kucher
is. Yeah.
Okay.
from
Okay.
Germany.
Now, if you were listening, I would have said, "I'm just a boy."
Okay.
That's funny. One thing I want to talk about Moray a little bit is I design vacuum triode amplifiers. So yeah, I do. I
In
learned
honor
I
of
learned
Tom Bearden, right?
yeah, I learned that from the Russian who was like in NORAD, but the Russian version of NORAD during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He mentored me. So this is one of a big power triode. It's very similar to an 845 that Nikola Tesla himself designed that I use in my amplifiers. But what I was going to say is, if you look at the way this tube works, is to actually get it to function and to control the tube, you have to apply a negative bias voltage. In other words, you're biasing the ether, and then you can make the tube function correctly. So if you look at the tube charts, which maybe next time I'll bring one in so we can look at them, it requires this negative bias voltage, and then the tube will actually function the way it needs to function. If it's not there, the tube runs away and burns itself up, essentially. So when Ken or anyone is dealing with this stuff, we have to bias the ether first, which is the permittivity. We change the permittivity, and then we can create these conditions where we can do 0-point energy, right? And of course, Sparky's thing was called the vacuum triode amplifier because it works very similarly, right?
I told Beard, "What are you doing naming it that?"
Yeah,
Because it confused people think in tubes, right? Just like
exactly. Yep,
you hijack their vocabulary,
yep,
right? Because it was an analogy, right? I have a weak signal, which is like the bias, right? Not modulating big energy coming through it. So that was the analogy of biasing, and so to name it the same as the tube, I said this confuses people.
It is very confusing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
said the mechanism of okay, I need to control it. The control signal can be very small, right? That is kind of standard in the systems theory. You don't have to name it after analogy that we do with tubes because we do the same analogy with transistors,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
This is the same thing's going on. It's a
Yeah.
common pattern in systems. So that was my major, systems engineering, and I have a beef about misapplying vocabulary because it just
Me.
creates confusion,
Yeah.
right? And then you
Yeah.
can't you get there's misunderstandings on the communication, everything else, right?
Yeah, it's
And
just
so
like black hole. At the center of our galaxy, it's not a black hole from subquantum kinetics, it's a mother star. So that's another difference. So I have a kind of this pet peeve about black holes. That Stephen Hawking talked about the black hole and how there was Hawking radiation coming out of it. Well, he was wrong. First of all, it's a mother star, and that Hawking radiation that he talked about coming out of it is actually the super wave that Paul Laviolette talks about. This energy coming out of it essentially. But
Yeah, like
I think
active volcano that erupts majorly every 12,000 years. He estimated.
yeah, and there's has been climactic environmental things caused by it. And Paul actually works with the scientists in the ice cores, and he found these kind of relationships and whatnot. And it's part of his other books, essentially. Yeah, so very interesting stuff, definitely.
Yeah, he's got
Going,
quite a lot of evidence. He's got quite a lot of evidence for it in subquantum kinetics and also Earth under fire. He did geochemistry, geophysics,
yeah,
astro archaeology, and he's
yeah,
quite a lot of, and also in
Paul,
subquantum kinetics he talks about
yeah.
it.
Because Paul was a quantum physicist who asked the greatest question ever, what makes up the quantum? And that's why it's called subquantum. The kinetics part is because it's this Turing wave that's moving. But Paul was also an astrophysicist. So he looked at the very, very small and the very, very large and found these connections, how everything needs to be fractal and sort of the same thing, just on different scales, essentially.
Also did work in psychology. I think he worked with a psychiatrist or something. He did some novel work in psychology on thought
Oh, I didn't know
formation
that.
and also
Well,
philosophy.
yeah,
I mean, it was transdisciplinary. He was a lot in mythology, climatology, paleontology, extragalactic physics, cosmology, particle physics, system science, free energy, anti-gravitics,
yeah,
electrogravitics.
yeah.
and Philadelphia experiment, right?
And the
That's
Philip.
Yeah.
And so I'll talk a little bit about that. My father, he was part of NORAD, and I don't know how this happened, but when I was 12, I actually saw the military version, the film of the Philadelphia experiment. And I know that because I know Peter Moon, and I talked to Peter a bunch, and I was explaining what I saw, and he told me, he said, you saw the actual real military version where they did it. But I'm kind of an expert on the electronics of the Philadelphia experiment, excuse me, and Montauk especially. And part of the reason why is because going back to these tubes, not too many people know that in 1939, Nikola Tesla himself, he retired as the vice president of worldwide engineering for RCA Tube Company. And that at that point, they were the largest technology company on the planet. And he designed the electronics that are in the Philadelphia experiment, but he also designed the stuff that Montauk works on as well, too, that receiver that it works on. And interestingly enough, the receiver has 6 channels. So 3 channels are used in space-time to lay out the coordinates of where we are, and because you've got the 3 coordinates of space and you've got 1 of time, but the other 3 channels were used. So there's 3 on space time, in the 3 in time space are used for the coordinates, the three coordinates of time, because now you have three coordinates of time and you have just one of space, which ends up being that particle, and that's why you're able to teleport. So if you manipulate or change the Turing wave, then once you do that, this is your key to teleportation and time travel and whatnot. So that's kind of my deal. And I learned, I never took electronics ever in my life. I learned everything from Deacon Erdek, who was the NORAD version of a radar guy, essentially. And he came from Serbia. He was from the Serbian area.
Al Bielek. Did you meet
Yes.
Preston Nichols?
No, but I know all
Cameron
about him and
Cameron Duncan?
yeah, and I
Right,
haven't met
and
any of those guys, but I know
Al
all
Bielek?
about them. Yeah, Al Bielek, exactly, right.
Al
That's all
Bielek
good.
from the Philadelphia experiment. Al Bielek, time traveler. Al Bielek.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
listened to
Al
him. I was
Bielek.
quite interested in him. I listened to him talking on
yeah.
YouTube a few times.
Peter
So I
Moon
met
talks
them.
about it. Oh, really? You met them?
Oh, yeah, because they were
No
speakers at
way.
the Psychotronics conference. So way about this is before the Tesla conference. We really didn't start up to '84.
Yeah.
So the Psychotronics conference is where I first got invited to speak. They were the only conference that would have me, right?
Now
Every other
everybody
one,
wants you now.
direct, yeah.
That's funny.
So oh boy, it was a heck of a story. But my claim to fame was I got to sit in the hotel room when Al with Al Bielek and a bunch of other people when they did the Philadelphia Experiment 1 and 2. I think was the second movie came out.
Yeah.
They put it in. I had it there on videotape, and none of us ever saw it. And then they showed it, and so I was in the room uh, as they were showing this to Al for the first
Wow.
time, and people wanted to see his reaction. But what was so weird for me about this experiment, the guy I was sitting next to was channeling or something incredible information about.
Ooh.
It's just weird. He's not a known. I don't remember his name. He just says, yeah, stuff comes to him,
Wow.
and people listen to him. I said, whoa. I said, that was like my first experience sitting next to somebody that just blew me away with the information content that was kind of spewing through him.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Do,
Well, and so I was more impressed with that than the movie, right? As I interacted with this guy, and I said, "Whoa, this so off the wall, unusual ideas that I resonate with." I say, "Yeah, that fits. That fits." He's saying things I've never heard from
do you think
anybody else.
Moray?
So
Do you think Al Bielek was because a friend of mine said to me a number of years ago, Al Bielek was a real person, you know, and that do you think that his travel into the future? Do you think that is a real thing, or a different timeline than we're on, or whatever?
yeah, now you have to have if you have time travel, if you want to resolve the time paradox, right? You go back, kill your grandfather, how are you going to exist, etc. That's the time paradox, time loop paradox.
Yeah.
You have parallel universes, right? Straight up. In fact, that was the multiverse and all those ideas in quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
It's consistent with quantum mechanics. Dancing Woolly Masters. I learned it from that book. Just wrote that name, Dancing Woolly Masters. This the name of the book. So was talking about the foundational implications of quantum mechanics, Bell's theorem, non-locality, and all this stuff. You open up the many worlds interpretation, Everett's many worlds interpretation, quantum mechanics. Here's what's interesting: quantum mechanics itself is perfectly mathematically self-consistent with two very diverse models. One model is a single future model, single
Yeah.
transactional model, I think they call that. So the quantum wave has to come from the future to make everything consistent, right? And so it's all kind of pre-locked in.
Yeah.
And then the opposite model is the many worlds model. We have all the parallel universes.
Yeah.
So well presented in the Back to the Future series, especially
Yeah.
number 2, right?
Yeah.
And so but they're self-consistent in theory. And what really tickles me, I met one guy that really believed in the single, right, transactional model, right? And I said, well, if that's the case, on that line, and he says, well, there's no free will because the future's locked in,
Then
right?
that's
Everything's
wrong. That's
locked in.
wrong.
Yeah, everything's like that. This was obvious to me. That's why I kind of chuckled that he bought
Yeah.
into the single one, because I guess it's simpler. And I said, hey, I'm an optimist, so we don't have to do any work. Let's just party because it's all done. And since I know we're
Yeah.
going to have a nice, successful future with our discovery, uh, don't ignore the bell. And so and he just goes, oh, I hate people that respond that way. because the funniest uh, response. I had a good friend, a mathematician, and it was a fellow programmer. They were great to work with because they love science fiction. So he said, "You get to live a science fiction life," as I do my ZPE thing, and so I said, "Then if you do that, then what's the purpose of life? If you have, if you're just
Right.
here." And you're on a roller coaster with a little baby steering wheel, like a car
Yeah.
seat, and you think you're in control.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
nothing because it's all predetermined. It's just that. And so, what's the purpose of life? My friend immediately answered like that. He said, punishment. We laughed and laughed, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the point. You're really forced into many worlds interpretation to say, whoa, you're really in control because you can start to pick the future you want. You get to pick,
Free
and then
will. We have free will.
free will, manifestation abilities,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
learning about how do we choose visualization, emotional energy, and because of our emotional energy, which is once again emotions are ion motion, we're picking universes. And say, and nice thing about the many worlds, you have an infinite number to pick from. So we're really good for free will and everything else. And then the point of dreaming, oh, I'm practicing. It's for practice. We're manifestors, right?
Well,
So
exactly. Yeah.
it opens up, right, the power of what we are, especially when we team up and we pick to manifest together. And that's
Exactly.
there's the battle. The battle is for over us, right? Good versus evil. We're the manifesting beings. We're like baby godlings, but we get powerful when we team up as a coherent group being. That's when we
Definitely.
really,
Like
you
this
know,
group right as an example. Yeah.
and so that's where I really get optimistic. I said, we're actually in control. We're supposed to learn to be in control. And the evil, those that subscribe to evil and things like that, they have no power of manifesting. They have to hijack humanity to be
That's
their
that
manifester
is
for
actually
them.
correct. Yeah.
And we're supposed to throw them off with our own free will, our own minds, because we're the powerful beings. And that's why nobody does it for us. All the advanced thinkers says, we're rooting for you, but you're birthing into a group being entity, and you
Yeah.
got to do this work yourself. It's like
That's
helping a
correct.
baby chick peck out of a shell,
Yeah.
right? You're you're birthing into a new entity, and otherwise you won't be a strong entity, right? As this new Gaia, uh, coherent sentient being that now is manifesting for us.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so I love this group because we've come from the other direction. So from the consciousness side, everybody knows this. Of course, we got to do this. And I started from the technical side,
Yep.
and then was dragged kicking and screaming into the consciousness because
I
that's where
come.
the solution lies, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it all became coherent, right? Including the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. It says there's your physics that allows it. So it's very easy, in fact, obvious once you're a conscious being. Where if we have a free will, it's the many worlds. And boy, then we become powerful. We can
Yeah.
now really choose, especially when we team up with each other,
And
right?
and,
And
and
get into
manifest things like you said, because that's
and
yeah.
manifestation. Well, and
Mhm.
a lot of videos on consciousness, The Secret, and I'll share another story on this. It just popped in my head. there was a scientist. I heard this at the psychotronics conference quite early. Spendthrift was his name. I think the Christian Science religion hired him to do studies. What creates psychokinesis? What are the
Ooh, okay.
characteristics? Okay, and essentially is visualization plus emotion, right?
Right.
And so the discovery is not all emotions are very important, which is a good thing. So what is the most potent of the emotions that that uh, that create manifestation?
Love.
That was my guess. It turned out. Any other guesses out there?
Sadness.
You know, you know what it was? It was laughter.
Oh,
Because
Laughter
what
is the
had
best medicine.
laughter? Because it had you visualize, right? And then the laughter had a built-in emotional spike with a let go. The let go is very important,
yeah.
right? You
The
manifest your
release.
image,
Yeah.
you let it go. And because if you dwell on it, you screw it up. The ego mind screws it
That's
up.
right.
It's not
Exactly.
going to work. Good
Yep.
news is fear, anxiety, all the negative emotions, they're very weak. No manifestation. You may screw up your own life, but you're not steering it all into those events, which is a good thing. So we're working with a net, right? Well, okay, you have a good emotions, you'll get to good results. You don't want the bad results, right? And we're
Yeah.
not in control. That's why we're in training. We're God's in training. And so left that was
You,
it. Now and Spendthrift got very a sad ending for him, very depressed because the Christian scientists hired him to do the research, which he did across the board with a variety of psychokinesis type of experiments, and they didn't like the result
Oh,
because what
wow.
they wanted was, oh, only our religion people can do it,
Yeah.
and all the other people in the other religions can't. That's what they wanted,
Yeah.
right? And then he was showing it was visualization plus emotion,
Yeah.
right? He was showing
And
it's
anybody
pretty
can do
well
that.
anybody could do it, and so so they rejected him, right? And I think there was he ended up committing suicide. He got so depressed, right?
Wow.
It's like
may I share something,
Yeah.
please?
mhm,
Um, so in my line of work, working as well with hypnotherapy, I find that a lot of people
mm,
struggle to visualize even one happy moment in life until sadness is removed. There can be all other stressors, and you're right, these low frequencies are not necessarily important, yet when they are lingering, they can block the doors to open for all higher frequencies.
Yeah.
And as soon as they are removed, everything is possible, and we can collect truckloads of happiness all throughout a lifetime and beyond. So the sadness is, from my experience, the cursor to either feeling true laughter, true happiness, and succeeding, being healthy and balanced once it's removed. But as long as it's lingering in the back, it can create all sorts of incoherence, not even
Mhm.
being sure about it. So one of my, say, clients um, was 93-year-old when he came to see me. And he was a highly developed Buddhist, practicing meditation, visualization, moving obstacles, etc. So highly developed, very skilled, yet developing breast cancer. Um, and what we found out is that he had suppressed the sadness of losing a young son. At some point, he couldn't even remember that it had happened. But
Wow.
once we have removed that sadness connected to the event, the cancer disappeared.
Wow.
yeah, and
So,
that's neat that we can unlock because we're manifesting on ourselves. We're the most susceptible to our own uh, psycho psychokinesis on us is most powerful. So that these are all good news because it just says we free from the blocking emotions, and then all of a sudden we become very powerful again.
Yeah, because we are the 0 point.
we're certainly using it. Everything is really
Yeah. Yeah.
everything that exists is from the every elementary particle.
Yeah.
So of course we are.
Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah. Wow. Amazing stuff. The when you were talking about the microscope, the dark field microscope work, but did that start with Royal Rife? The
A good question, right? Because how in the world did Rife back then come up with all this stuff in high complexity? That when I see that is way beyond the scope of normal technology.
Yeah.
I'm thinking these guys had to be channeling this. Something's guiding them from beyond because
Yeah.
that's way too advanced. The PAP engine's the same way. He was making clusters of inert gas mixtures before that was even in our science. That didn't come into our science into the 80s.
Yeah.
Right. So he's doing all this advanced stuff. So there's other, and so when somebody's too advanced, something's coming through, which is good news. I mean,
Well,
that means
exactly. Yeah.
we're not alone or our high selves. We are connected into some very powerful information that we're supposed to have. The Hubbard device was the same story. A 16-year-old kid, right, in 1919. Uh, he said, "How'd you come up to make this energy machine?" He says, "It was given to me. Angels visited me, and they gave me the information, right?" And he just
Yeah.
did it. He didn't understand it,
Yeah.
right? And it only got on the radar in the lores because a professor at UW up in Seattle, a professor at the university, was witnessing and working with them, and it was just wide-eyed. Is really, really there.
Yeah.
Like
What's
it's the
going
first
on
one that
here?
was manifested. He predated Moray by a couple of years, to Henry Moray, who was
Wow.
doing it. He was doing it more by experiment,
Yeah.
more trial and error on Moray's side as he noticed things and improved them gradually. So Hubbard is just a quantum dump. That's the name Toby Gross gave revelation. Boom,
Yeah.
here's your revelation, then go do it. So I see it, and if others can repeat. And by the way, that is the device that was indeed replicated. The first historic device by Paul Brown on his resonant nuclear battery is what he called it. He
Okay.
read he rediscovered and re got it to work. What the original Hubbard device. So
Yeah.
and I applauded him. I says first
Just
time
think,
we had that
I,
redone.
I wanted to
Go ahead.
tell you about when Tesla drove that electric car he had those two um, types of material, and then he had some electronics, and he had an electric car, a Pierce Arrow, that he drove for over 80 miles, I think it was, or something. Well, Dr. James Schwartz went to Japan and reproduced those in the thousands. And eventually they arrested him and said that if you ever do this ever again in your life, we will put you in jail indefinitely. So he had to sign a non-disclosure basically to do it. But he produced thousands and thousands of those rods because he knew the secret. And it might be because he found crates of Tesla's notes in the ground at Colorado, where Tesla was. I never really asked him where that information came from, but there is a YouTube that Dr. Sala did, I think, with him, that talks a lot about all of this. And I'll see if I can try and find it, maybe send it to you, because it's really, really interesting stuff, basically.
Just girl wants to have Ika wants to raising a hand.
Oh, yeah.
I tell you, I'll unmute yourself, Ika.
Just a girl.
She needs to unmute herself if she wants to speak. Just a girl.
There. Now.
Oh, there we go.
Now. Here I am. So I just wanted to maybe throw into the conversation that it was Gunther Enderlein from Germany that was born already in 70 something, that did research of pleomorphism and developed as well the dark field microscopy, had the terrain theory that was back then kind of swept under the carpet. Yet he talked already about the protons, which would be possibly identical to what would be close to the ions and the charge clusters, because he says it's the smallest unit of what creates life and proteins, and is what decides whether it develops positive or on the negative shank of a cell structure, being healthy cell or an unhealthy cell, a mutation, a virus, a bacteria, or whatever needs to be happening. So he was, I think, one of the forefathers to publish with using dark field blood microscopy.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah, I did not know that. So then, he would have probably done it from that essentially when he did his because he had electronics. There was tube electronics, and then he had that microscope that he had built. Yeah, interesting stuff. There's supposedly he has a nephew named Matthew Rife, and I actually asked Matthew, because I had contact with him at one point, if he had the original Rife device, because if I had the original Rife device, I could reverse engineer it and recreate all those tube electronics again, or even just rebuild what's there essentially. And also we were talking about the Philadelphia experiment. Dr. James Schwartz actually has a frequency generator from the Philadelphia experiment. And I think he told me that what he learned from that frequency generator when he was rebuilding it, because it's also vacuum tubed, so we were talking about it. What he learned from that, I believe those frequencies that he learned and got, and he said there were 5 of them that he used, is the frequencies that he uses in his flex power generator, essentially. I know that. So that's really interesting stuff. Wow.
I just think when you said flux power generator, I was thinking of Moray making the joke last week about the flux capacitor. Remember in Back to the Future? Is there any truth in that? The flux capacitor?
I think there is. Yeah, I think there is a little bit of truth there, right? What do you think about that, Moray?
Well, the joke he made, it needs a lot of power.
That's right.
That's 1.4 gigawatts, right?
Yeah, that's right. But I think this idea of moving flux is maybe part of the key, because I think that's how he's doing it, but Dr. James Schwartz is doing it. He's got 6 what are basically cells like a battery, and when he adds them all up, he gets, I think, 12 volts or whatever. But he's got it's definitely scalar, because there's a set of almost like antennas that come from, not antennas, they're grounds. There's an earth ground, but there's 2 grounds that go to earth, and it's 2 wires, right? So it's bifilar, or it's scalar. And there's a special gel that he said, that connects that to the earth essentially. And that was what he talked about. He didn't really talk about how it works or anything, but he said that if that isn't there, then these cells will actually burn themselves up. So that is the control mechanism, the scalar ground essentially, to controlling these cells so that they stay in their operating zone, much like the biasing of the tube that I was talking about. If we don't bias the tube correctly, it doesn't work correctly, or it doesn't work at all, or it blows itself up. So it has to be done just perfectly correctly, and that's biasing or changing the permittivity of the vacuum itself, I think, is part of the key to it, right? Yeah.
Shoulders uses that. He says permittivity transitions. I think he had one of his paper called that.
Yeah, we went through it on here actually already. Yeah.
And the point was, if you start to really interact with the vacuum, that's a sign that you're changing the polarizability of what's going on with the nature of the vacuum. The permittivity has to do with polarization.
Also, John Hutchinson was he doing time travel? I know he was levitating cannonballs and teleportation.
No, John. Well, I mean, who knows what he was doing with DARPA?
But he created what's the majig? He created a model of the Ark of the Covenant in copper to do certain
He's
things. I mean, anyway, he was go on, Eddie. You talk.
he's done a lot of really cool things. There's something that they're working on now, and I don't know very much about it, but when I was in the live stream with him, he talked about this. I think he called it the Tordon generator. And there's something really special with this because Nancy, his wife, she talked probably even more than John did on that live feed with me about things, but they kept referring back to when they fired this thing up, they're going to have a bunch of people go there. And I also know that there's a lot of work been done on the hydrogen line with John Hutchison and his frequencies, because he's really known for his frequencies and his ability to manipulate things, with these frequencies. But it's all done with charge clusters at the end of the day, essentially. It's just manipulating them and controlling them, essentially. And I wanted to add this to Moray. Like, we know that charge clusters can go from a white state to a black state. And there's a loop that can be formed there. And one of the things that Shoulder said and Chris Beskar said is that if you can sort of get that loop going and control it, this is another mechanism for tapping the ether, essentially. Yeah. Ika had a comment in or actually something on my signal.
Moray is muted, so he's back now.
The using of the charge cluster going dark is trapping the charge cluster and trying to continue to use it. I was looking at inventions where that may be the working model. So rather than dissipating it, and Ken really got spiritual on these things. He says, and I think somehow they may even have sentience as a group. So he really got into La La Land on those ideas. But the idea, I'm looking at intriguing inventions where people may have discovered how to trap them in a dielectric medium.
Like Sparky, right?
Yeah, Sparky was an example. The fractal emission, cold fusion cracking was an example. I don't want to lose it. Rather than just have it hit something and wreck it. Right? You can hit something, get some EMP out of it, just made a crater, so you destroy. And so the intriguing one, the Russian, or the inventors now come to mind. I talked about them last 2 years. Very little information. Gretzkovich was the name of the Russian inventor. Somebody tipped me off. They said, this is really good. And as I was reading it, he made the original discovery in the 70s. He was trapping basically charge clusters in pure water. And it has to be pure because you don't want any conductivity.
Right.
And then part of it was moving the water and then having a frictional charging against barium titanate to kind of create a repulsion electric field that keeps them in the water, so we don't lose them, right?
You're harnessing them.
Well, now I have them trapped, and then I'm moving the water. And have pickup coils around the whole thing. So all of a sudden, and because room temperature currents are very notoriously slow, all of a sudden you're moving these really fast under your control. And then the other ideas are, well, the charge clusters have a propulsion mechanism as well.
They do, yeah.
And so when he it was a claim of making a big one in Russia in the 90s, a huge torus where he's circulating the water.
Okay, wow.
The Gretzkovich device. And so there's very little information. Rex research paper.
Yep.
Gretzkovich, and just Google that. You get to the paper.
Okay.
That others are. He doesn't speak English very well, so others are helping him translate. And then a Russian patent, and then the European patent application. Russia grants the patent. European patent application refuse it. Right, and somebody had to help translate whatever he was trying to say in Russian to the European patent, and he didn't quite understand it. He didn't know about charge clusters. I mean, who does back then?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
and or EVs or whatever. And but it's just an empirical discovery of some sort. freaking, I don't know. I think his son is still alive.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, it's very intriguing. So I didn't really know about the device, but I got a tip, on the Rex research paper to read it, and then I was able to get to the patents once I got the details of his name and things like that.
Yeah.
And so there was
Cool.
an example that I said, "Wow." Trapping him in water, and he likewise was a paranoid inventor type that says, "Oh, I don't, I want to get my patent, but I don't want to share details,
Yeah.
right?" So he's kind of caught in this conflict. I'm going to mislead him with this and that and things like that. So it's like piecing together a puzzle. Here's a guy that doesn't want to disclose, yet he wants a patent, right? And he makes this remarkable. I mean, we're talking about a net in the megawatts from I think, 6 meter wide. So it's a big torus, which would fit
Wow.
in one room. And he was claiming in the megawatt net output, and
Wow.
he only needed kilowatts of to drive it using
Yeah.
kilowatts pulse
Yep.
from big capacitors right into the heart of that water. And
Okay.
so I'm piecing it together like a little puzzle, right? And so could it be this? Could it be that? And so
Sounds
it's
cool.
intriguing. People are intrigued because, well, he got a big effect, and the original experiments don't sound that bad. When he originally discovered it, mentioned I was maybe getting kilowatt level outputs
Yeah.
using a pump to circulate. It's hard if you're trapping charge clusters and you're trying to go through an impeller of a pump, right? You're going to lose some, likely
Oh,
damage the
right.
pump, etc.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you want to find another way to stimulate the motion, which was some type of pulsing. So I had driver coils on the final device to move it, but at
Yeah.
least he's got the anomaly, got the starting point was, and that's what I recommend. Start at the simplest thing to see if anything's there. So he really stressed the need for the frictional charging against the surface. So he wanted to have a barium titanate, high dielectric constant, and the water to slip by it. I think he had some barium ferrite powder
So,
in the water too.
so,
So it gets frictional charging. And I think there's a containment mechanism
eh,
to make sure that charge cluster was repelled away from the wall and stayed in the middle.
yeah. And
Right.
anytime you mention barium titanate, I always get the phase conjugation thing going because that's what we use barium titanate for, right? To make things coherent.
And
So,
of course, that has the highest dielectric constant. That's
yeah, or
why
well,
it's a number one
higher.
pick, right?
BZT is better. Barium zirconium titanate. It's got a
Uh-huh.
K of 23,000.
Yeah.
It's quite a bit better
And
actually.
then they use them for piezo
Yeah,
vibrations
yeah,
as well. So
exactly.
you have
Yeah,
a sonic electrical connection there for etc. And so, well, I summarized that because that I presented on that this year.
oh,
Uh,
cool.
at my Tesla
Is it
talk this
recorded?
year.
Is that
Yeah.
recorded? Oh, could
Yeah,
we
it's
get
got a
maybe?
live stream at Tesla Tech. You get the whole
Oh,
show. They
could
select to sell individual DVDs of the different talks.
yeah,
But that's kind of old school, right? Now people realizing, yeah, yeah.
you can have
So
a
they
link.
started live streaming. TeslaTech.info
Okay.
is the Tesla Tech info. Well, they sponsor a conference every year, and they
Yeah.
have Sunday night. Steve's place, Steve Ellswick, right? He has a Sunday night broadcast, webcast, YouTube channel, and all the stuff, the old stuff is for free on the YouTube channel. I think the older talks, he
Oh,
just
cool.
arranged that everybody can watch them. So you go
Any
to TeslaTech.inc, and Steve's place was the name of the show, and so I think from TeslaTech.inc you can get to all the links
okay, cool.
to get
Subscribe to
at
his
that.
YouTube. Yeah, definitely. That's amazing actually. I'd love to watch that. So
Yeah, and so now I could, as I said, you guys finally stepped into the modern age with the live stream of the conference. He's worrying about trying to keep it going, making some money, right? Just keep it limping along as a business. It has not done well, but he's gotten donations from wealthy people over the years just to keep things going,
yeah,
and so that really helps, and so uh, there you can get to the most current stuff through that. And then
Oh,
people pointing out, wow, the live stream is a bargain, which means it's all recorded. So they
yeah.
started it the year before, and it's all recorded. So you can purchase the live stream rights and watch it as much as you want, and then you're pretty well getting to see every talk,
Yeah, that's
right?
cool. And Moray, I have some news for you too. I sent the last week's meeting to Chris Beskar, and he texted me back a couple days later and said he'd like to meet you.
Cool.
So yeah, so that I thought that was really cool. And probably what we'll do is we'll probably get Just a Girl, Chris Beskar, you and me on my Technology Envoy channel to talk. But we might try and get you. Last time what we did is we had Chris Beskar in this meeting, and then we recorded after. So maybe what we could do is have both you guys in the meeting for an hour or so, and then we'll record the thing on Technology Envoy after that. That allows everyone to kind of get, to meet everyone again and whatnot. So we'll try and do that on a Sunday at some point. So it'll be basically just like this. It will be this meeting essentially that we'll jump into,
Well,
and then
this
after
this
that,
is a good time for me. The
is it?
only
I was going to
Oh yeah,
ask you.
10 a.m. But the only problem is uh, I'm having so much fun. The day dissipates away. Like last week, we went 5 hours, didn't
I
even
know
know
it was
it.
crazy.
It's
I know
really
it
fun.
was epic.
So I really can't. I really, I promise myself I can't stay on that long.
Yeah,
So
no, normally we're only here for a couple hours. So I think if we record, we'll only be on for an hour, and then we'll stop. We'll have to capture the recording. We'll talk off camera for a whole bunch so you guys can meet each other. And then, like I said, Just a Girl, you, I, and Chris Beskar will get together because like you never knew about Ken or about Stavati Aerospace because it was all
right,
classified, right?
right.
Just like
I
John
did.
Hutchison.
Right. I did meet John Hutchinson at a conference.
Oh, cool.
He became famous. George Hathaway
Yep.
was the guy that investigated him, and it
Yep.
was fun because for years George Hathaway was really a reliable researcher that everybody loved. He's a hands-on experimentalist and investigating things. And year after year, we only had no good results to report. I investigated this, was a bust. I investigated that, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of a depressing talk. Every year, George has got to report it. And then after investigating, oh, oh,
John.
John Hutchinson, right? He
Yeah.
was wide-eyed. You can't believe what I saw. Right? He had all these
Exactly.
videos.
Yeah.
He put them on the map because everybody trusted George, right?
Yeah.
He's not going to jerk
Yeah.
us around. And it just blew him away. What he observed, and he was
Oh,
sharing all the
absolutely.
things, and so he was kind of getting depressed about, gee, there's nothing coming out of this free energy investigations, right? For years, and all of a sudden,
There's this
John
guy.
blew him away. It wasn't quite under control, right? John, then I'm going, wow. John Hutchison's is like intuitively spinning it out, like something's guiding him.
That's what
Right,
he
right.
was. Yeah, that's
He
exactly
says,
what he was
I
doing.
don't know. I can't say
Yeah.
why. I asked him, what's
Yeah.
because I'm just following the vibe and wiggling the knobs. I thought it was so
Yeah.
funny. So I
And
met him and Nancy, right?
oh, that's cool. So we'll
We
probably
shared
get
a
you
meal
guys
together.
together with John. And John was actually supposed to be in these meetings, but he doesn't have a Zoom. It didn't work, so I have to go to Skype. So there might be a Skype meeting where we all join so that John can be in it as well too at some point. Yeah, and John got hired right at that point by DARPA, so he was actually brought
Oh,
in by Ronald Reagan. He told me he was brought in personally by Ronald Reagan to work on the Star Wars program, which is just Strategic Defense Initiative.
Uh-huh.
And he worked for DARPA for a number of years, just like Chris Beskar did as well, too, right? So it'll be kind of neat to get you guys all together and talking about Ken Shoulders because it's all about Ken Shoulders and charge
Yeah,
clusters and whatnot, right?
right. And I'm wondering, how if he's signed on, how much can he say, right? Once you're
John,
agreed to a classified
I think
contract.
I think he's maybe not totally free, but something else that John did for me. It's amazing. There's a guy named Peter, and Peter is one of John's friends, his DoD friends, and has been for like forever. And Peter, he might be retired now, but he was the Officer of Advanced Technology at the Pentagon. So recently, John and Peter and I all got connected. He said he CC'd me and we introduced each other and whatnot. So I don't know again if he's still active or not, but he was the Chief Technology of Advanced Technologies at the Pentagon, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a disconnect between people really involved in classified programs and then what they're at liberty to talk about.
Absolutely.
And so there's something that there's contradictory there. That if they're willing to get on shows and talk about it versus, well, were they really constrained by a classified program? Because
Yeah.
that's, if they speak of it, then
Well,
then it's
they'll say a certain amount on camera, but off camera they can say other things.
Yeah, because Chris Beskar has shared tons of stuff off camera with Brendan and I and other people that he can't talk about on camera. And I think John, because Carmen, who's in our group here, knows John and has known him forever. She basically says he's to the point now where he doesn't really care about it. And his DOD friend, again, Peter, maybe they're saying, yeah, you can, we'll let you have more of a leash, maybe not talk about everything, but you can talk about most things now, because now's the time, I think, right?
So. Right. The other part is, okay, we have mature developed technology, right? Including the craft, the anti-gravity type.
Yep.
We have the control system all done. I says,
yep.
For us to get that advanced, we had to have helpers.
We did.
Yeah, it would make sense to have it. So what's right? It's like disclosure. We have it developed already, which means we don't really need to rediscover it because it's already done
in the secret
right?
space program.
Yeah. Yep. So there's a kind of a contradiction that, well, okay, so are you behind the suppression because you don't want the experimentalists to start to do it? Okay. It's kind of they want to control the release, right?
I can talk to a lot about that because I'm an expert on the Pius patents, and that's how the Navy released free energy and anti-gravity and everything. But the Pius patents are not what Stavati Aerospace is using for all of their technologies. Chris told me this. Stavati is using Ken Shoulder's patents and all the charge cluster stuff. And what's going on here is Chris is not really allowed to talk about it very much because he's got a security clearance. And when David Wilcock bought into Stavati, when they had that meeting October 20th of 2020 with Donald Trump, both of them had a direct meeting with him when they bought Stavati. At that point, David Wilcock became an owner and had to get a security clearance. So now both of them can't talk about stuff. But they had recorded all this other stuff beforehand that I've got access to in all these those portals and some of those shorts that I showed you. So that's kind of how it's happening. So the military or the Navy is doing the Pius patents right here. Well, in the background, the real work at Stavati and charge clusters and Ken Shoulders and so on is actually, we're releasing it. We're the ones that are actually doing it. And this group is part of that, right?
So, where the disconnect is, well, if you guys are suppressing inventors, right, that stumble across it with really weak discoveries compared to what you've already developed, okay, so what's the point, right? You guys want to be in charge of the release, right, the powers that be, because you already have it developed and we're gifted it. And we all kind of agree, oh, yeah, is the human race ready to have it, all that. Those ideas are being kept around. And I can respect that, of course, because one look at the news, you realize, hell no is the answer, right? The way people misbehaving. And then you wonder, okay, then what's the point of going off and making an invention if you're just going to suppress it? Right, and you guys want to be in charge, and way better stuff will be gifted later.
Yeah.
So what that there you can see the essence of the contradiction, right?
Absolutely.
That then why should we go do it if you're going to suppress it, right?
Yeah.
And so what's up? And then the answer, circles back. Well, if you just get the human race ready in a more mature level where we can actually have it safely,
Yeah.
That's what we're really trying to do, right?
Yeah.
So we can have it, but we need to maybe release enough of it so people say it's really there, really aware. Because I always
Yeah.
said, you
That's
bring
right.
the engineering community doesn't believe any of this stuff because they're never taught any of this
That's right.
in
Yeah.
undergraduate. You bring a highly intelligent group that will know how to work together, and right, we'll way accelerate into technology that works.
Yeah.
Right, but as long as that group is not involved and ignores the field, nothing happens. Right, that's the real goal of the experiments. That you could do this for yourself. Behold, it's really there. Right,
Yeah.
and so we see these interplays of what I call them extreme ideas. Oh, we already have it. We're ready to gift it on one hand, and then the other hand is,
I,
we bring you guys on board, trying to get you excited to do it.
I think it's not going to be gifted. It's sort of gifted in the fact that here it is. You guys are kind of allowed to do this now, but you need to do it yourself, and that's why we've got contact with Chris, right, directly. And these this CC Connecting Consciousness group across the world has these humanitarian projects. Part of the indication that we're almost at that point of being ready is these humanitarian projects are actually out there and are already been handed over to the white hats, because it's all about the white hats and the black hats. The white hats want us to have this technology. We're actually 1,500 years ahead of what you think we are in the secret space program. And I know that because of my connection in there, but also because of all the people that knew William Tompkins personally, like 6 people that I know knew Tompkins personally, Dr. Sala and a whole bunch of others, right? So we know these technologies are there. Whether they're going to be like totally handed over, the med beds might be handed directly over, but I think some of these other things are being handed to groups like us and others. Like I know that you're in another group as well. These are the groups that are going to actually work with this technology and bring it forth, is my understanding of it all.
Well, it's really, where's the experiment for others to do, right? Is the key.
Well,
Yeah,
in a way,
yeah,
we're part of
exactly that.
we're part of bringing it out. They're relying on us to do a certain amount of the work and also to publicize it. So we're just one cog in the wheel, and also it's partly political. So when the politics starts to change, when the politics supports this, then it will come out more, because I think it's both political. So we as a group, where the scientists at university who work on free energy but have to be political about it and deny it in order to keep their jobs, they're relying on people like us who realize it's real to help bring it out. So we're just one cog in the wheel, in the machine. We're just one cog. But I think the politics, this is where I think Trump and the white hats can sort of like be instrumental, is that the politics has to be right. You can't just, if the politics is totally against it, then we can't really do anything. So it's a whole thing. It's a holistic. It's a whole. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've had several meetings, and there's another one coming up, and they do talk about how, at what level we are at, or how close we are to funding, and the fact that some of them have already been funded. So
yeah,
that means that these projects, these humanitarian projects, if the white hats are in control of these, because my project has already been handed over to them essentially. So it's just for them to say, okay, this is the time to pull the trigger on this one, essentially. But if they're already looking at this stuff, then we're almost at that point, is what I'm trying to say.
I mean,
and when the wars end, Trump is trying to end all of the wars. It's actually on one of the charts that the wars end, then humanitarian projects get handed out. It was what I'm talking about. And the very next thing under that is release the 6,000 patents that are out there,
both free energy
suppressed.
and medical and free energy patents.
Yeah, all of them basically. It's on my chart right behind me here.
Yeah,
actually. Yeah.
Go on, Eddie. So yeah.
Yes. So basically, that's the deal. Is this, and that's when the money system is going to change over. And I don't really know that much about that, because I don't really
Yeah.
care about
I
that
mean, you've
part of it.
known
It's the
about this since you
technology.
were around about 12, 15 years old. About 20 or 15 years
Free
ago,
energy, yeah.
20 or 15 years ago, I couldn't, free energy was like I couldn't get my head, but I thought, is that real? Or is it? I couldn't believe it was real because of what I've been taught.
Yeah.
You learned about it since you were about 12, 15 years old.
Yep.
You learned about
Yeah,
it
I
long.
have. Because of
My,
Carmen's
my, my
father.
family, my family didn't, like 3 or 5 years ago, they wouldn't believe it. Now they believe it's real. So much more people, not even though I haven't seen a free energy device working in the flesh, in the physical, I know I can see. I've done enough research to realize that it's real, and I've spoken to enough people, and I've theorized about it, and I can see it's real. My family believe it's real, and like 3 to 5 years ago, they didn't. They thought it was, So lots more people. So, it's just like a bit like the apartheid. We thought apartheid would go on forever. It went on for years. The same with the
Yeah.
Berlin Wall. That we thought the Soviet Union would never end. The Cold War.
Yeah. That's right.
People were very afraid of nuclear war in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. It was quite a big fear for people.
Absolutely.
Then the Berlin Wall came down, and I mean, maybe it wasn't as clean as we'd like it to be with these color revolutions, but once I mean, anyway, that's that. So I'll just say that.
Yeah. Pretty interesting stuff. And the other thing too is that I know that we're in a trial period, or basically with the Galactic Confederation of Worlds. So that tells us that we're almost at that point too, where this
A
stuff
lot more
wants to be
people think
released.
free energy is real. Quite a lot. Most people, what is it? Something like 60 to 80% of Americans believe UFOs are real. 20 years ago, that wouldn't be that figure. It was more like
Yeah.
30 or 40%. Now it's more like 70, 80%. Many more people believe free energy is real and that UFOs and aliens, ET is real.
Yeah.
About
And
20 years ago, I was trying to get my head round, about 20, 15 years ago, I was kind of like, ET was like fantastical. It's too fantastical. But I was partly believing it and then thought, no, but in the last 10 to 15 years, that's much more real to me. Even though I haven't seen an extraterrestrial, through binoculars, I saw a star, a bright star wobbling quite a lot.
oh,
And
yeah.
my hands were wobbling. The shakiness of my hands. But I noticed the background stars were wobbling much less with the shakiness. But this star was wobbling, and my mother looked at it, so she said, "Yeah, it's definitely wobbling much more than the background stars."
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, but so yeah, ET is real to me. I mean, if I saw an extraterrestrial tomorrow, I wouldn't be too. I wouldn't. It wouldn't blow my mind. I'd think, yeah, I knew that was real.
Get some
And lot,
infrared binoculars. Infrared. You'll see
Yeah.
a show. So,
Yeah. That's right.
pretty well everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's a
Absolutely.
good sign. That's a good sign that we're getting there. We're getting there bit by bit. So anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're at that point almost now, essentially. I think the biggest thing was in 2019 when the
Near-death
highest patents
experiences,
got released.
also near-death experiences. Like in the 70s, that was like 70s and 80s. That was, you didn't talk about it. Now lots of people believe, if it's on YouTube and etc. Lots of people believe that the afterlife is just, yeah, that's real. It seems much more real. Back in the 70s and 80s, 90s, you couldn't really talk about it. People think you're crazy or something.
Well, that's because our consciousnesses are being opened up, and that's why all of this stuff is happening. So we're going back to the consciousness of the planet,
You couldn't talk
if you
about
want to put it that
consciousness.
way.
They had like behavioral psychology, that I mean, you couldn't really, scientists didn't really want to talk about consciousness. Some of them are still a bit like that, but it's much more like it's Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance and the what's it called? What I've forgotten the name of that. Anyway, Rupert Sheldrake stuff is more accepted. The talk of physicists, some physicists are working with consciousness. They're trying to incorporate consciousness into the physical paradigm of physics.
Yeah.
That's
And
what
I know that
phenomena. That's more accepted. Or also panspermia or panpsychism, psyche everywhere. Pan means everywhere. Panpsychism. That's in philosophy. That was rejected. 70s, 80s, 90s. That was whatever. It was thought of as rubbish by a lot of scientists.
Yeah, again, because our consciousnesses are opening up. We're headed. They say that we're not at the third density anymore. That we're actually in a sector of space. The whole galaxy is moving into a fourth density and fifth density. And I know that Arcturus, for example, is the model that Earth wants to be. And most Arcturians are at fifth density or higher. And the density is just the frequency of your DNA. That's basically what it is. And
Also,
there's 12 densities, and the 13th density is source or God, if you want to put it that way, but we like to say source, yeah. But I think it's all about the consciousness being opened up again. Yeah, very cool. Well, we've been going for quite a while. We try to keep these meetings kind of a little bit on, the shorter side. So, yeah. And Aika, thank you or just a girl, thank you for coming. And yeah, I think we'll probably wrap it up now. So thank you again, Moray, especially for coming today.
Yeah,
yeah, that's
Moray,
great. And
just to
I
go,
had to find
Charles.
the link. So make sure at least I get the link in the email.
Yeah, I'll send it to the Galactic Star Seeds, and I'll.
He's not. Yeah, he's not part of.
My,
He's not part of that. You need to email
I'll
it to
just
him.
put,
Yeah,
I'll email.
I'm a Starseed wannabe.
We can put you in there if you want. Are you on Signal, Moray?
Signal.
You can download Signal. It's quite easy to download onto your phone.
And it's really great app.
Send you an email. Send a group email.
Yeah, I'm on like Telegram. Yeah, just send it to my email.
I'll send you the group email or whatever, and then I'll send it to you.
Then I get it.
Yeah, very cool. And like I say, in the next little while, in the next month or two, maybe we could have you in here with Chris Beskar, but also you in here with John Hutchison, because we were trying to get him in with you the other day. And I'm going to get him on Skype, and we're going to see if we can maybe fix his iPad so that he can get onto a Zoom call. And if we can't, because if it's too old, he might not have enough memory to do whatever. I've got one like that too. We'll figure something out, with Skype or whatever. But we'll do
somebody
it.
buy him a computer.
Well, somebody buy him an iPad.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. I was thinking about that, as a matter of fact. Yeah, totally. So again, thank you, everyone. What a wonderful conversation. Oh my God. And to have it from you, part of the reason why people are understanding and knowing that free energy is real is because of you, my sir. Moray, you're the one that wrote the books. You're the one that's been at these conferences. You're the one that knows Ken Shoulders and John Hutchison and all these guys involved with this. Like I said, you're a legend and a pioneer in all of this. I love it.
Oh, well, thank you. And I'm glad I'm not alone, right? For years, right, I've been alone. And now what's thrilling about your group is your source is more, we start a consciousness. Okay, we're at a high level and now we're trying to help going on. So I started from the other side. I started from technology, and then naturally led into consciousness. If you connect the dots, you're forced there.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? To say how to solve the problem. So you're already there. Okay, now we just got to bring the technology. So for years I was alone, right? Nobody else, and then people would trickle in, and finally got invited to a conference, and then discovered more.
Yeah.
So thank you for all for what you're doing, because we kind of keep concluding, if we want this to accelerate along, get the consciousness accelerated.
Exactly.
And then I thought, well, I got to change the whole world consciousness, and the answer came to me: transform yourself, the rest will follow.
That's exactly right. Yes, exactly. We are the 0 point. If we concentrate on ourselves, then everything will follow. Exactly. Yeah. Get your frequencies up and just know that it's real, and we want to make this manifest this. Right.
And you steer right into the multiverse of choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Beautiful. Very cool.
So that's a happy note to end on.
Very, very cool. Okay, guys, maybe you should shut the recording off, Brandon.
Okay,
before
thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Cheers.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye then. Bye.
Right.